Okay, welcome back to my channel. I'm still working out the number one intro, the whatever I'm gonna say, the intro, the outro, Okay, so today is video 4, chapter 51 is in Annabeth chapter. Annabeth had seen some strange things before, but she'd never seen it rain cars. As the roof of the cavern collapsed, sunlight blinded her. She got the briefest glimpse of the Argo 2 hovering above. It must have used its balliste to blast the hole straight through the ground. Chunks of asphalt as big as garage doors tumbled down, along with 6 or 7 Italian cars. One would have crushed the Athena Parthenos, but the statue's glowing aura acted like a force field, and the car bounced off. Unfortunately, it fell straight toward Annabeth. She jumped to one side, twisting her back foot. A wave of agony almost made her pass out, but she flipped on her back in time to see a bright red Fiat 500 slam into Arachne's silk trap, pushing it through the cavern floor, disappearing with the Chinese spider cuffs. As Arachne fell, she screamed like a freight train on collision course, but her wailing rapidly faded. All around Annabeth, more chunks of debris slammed through the floor, riddling it with holes. The Athena Parthenos remained undamaged, though the marble under its pedestal was the starburst of fractures. Annabeth was covered in cobwebs. She trailed strands of leftover spider silk from her arms and legs like the strings of a marionette, but somehow, amazingly, none of the debris had hit her. She wanted to believe that the statue had protected her, though she suspected it might have been nothing but luck. The army of spiders had disappeared. Either they had fled back into darkness, or they had fallen into the chasm. As the daylight flooded the cavern, Arachne's tapestries along the walls crumbled to dust, which Annabeth could hardly bear to watch, especially the tapestry depicting her and Percy. But none of that mattered when she heard Percy's voice from above. "Annabeth!" "Here!" she sobbed. All the terror seemed to leave her in one massive yelp. As the Argo 2 descended, she saw Percy leaning over the rail. His smile was better than any tapestry she'd ever seen. The room kept shaking, but Annabeth managed to stand. The floor at her feet seemed stable for the moment. Her backpack was missing, along with Daedalus' laptop. Her bronze knife, which she'd had since she was 7, was also gone, probably fallen into the pit. But Annabeth didn't care. She was alive. She edged closer to the gaping hole made by the Fiat 500. Jagged rock walls plunged into the darkness as far as Annabeth could see. A few small ledges jutted out here and there, but Annabeth saw nothing on them, just strands of spider silk dripping over the sides like Christmas tinsel. Annabeth wondered if Arachne had told the truth about the chasm. Had the spider fallen all the way to Tartarus? She tried to feel satisfied with the idea, but it made her sad. Arachne had made some beautiful things. She'd already suffered for eons. Now her last tapestries had crumbled. After all that, falling into Tartarus seemed too harsh an end. Annabeth was dimly aware of the Argo 2 hovering to a stop about 40 feet from the floor. Sorry, my dad came in. My brothers are sleeping, so I got quiet. A few small ledges jutted out here and there, but Annabeth saw nothing on. Oh wait, hold on. Annabeth. Okay, 40 feet from the floor, it lowered a dark rope ladder, but Annabeth stood in a daze, staring into the darkness. Then suddenly Percy was next to her, lacing his fingers in hers. He turned her gently away from the pit and wrapped his arms around her. She buried her face in his chest and broke into tears. "It's okay," he said. "We're together." He didn't say, "You're okay," or "We're alive." After all that they'd been through over the last year, he knew the most important thing was that they were together. She loved him for saying that. Their friends gathered around him. Nico D'Angelo was there, but Annabeth's thoughts were so fuzzy this didn't seem surprising to her. It seemed only right that he would be with them. Your leg, Piper knelt next to her and examined the bubble-wrap cast. Annabeth, what happened? She started to explain. Sorry, that was my brother. Talking was difficult, but as she went along, her words came more easily. Percy let go of her hand, which also made her feel more confident. When she finished, her friends' faces were slack with amazement. Gods of Olympus, Jason said. You did that alone with a broken ankle? Well, some of it with a broken ankle. Percy grinned. You made Arachne weave her own trap? I knew you were good, but holy Hera, Annabeth, you did it. Generations of Athena kids tried and failed. You found the Athena Parthenos. Everyone gazed at the statue. What do we do with her? Frank asked. She's huge. We'll have to take her with us to Greece, Annabeth said. The statue's powerful. Something about it will help us stop the giants. The giant's bane stands golden pale, Hazel quoted, one with pain in from a woven jail. She looked at Annabeth with admiration. It was Arachne's jail. You tricked her into leaving it. With a lot of pain, Annabeth thought. Leo raised his hands. He made a finger picture frame on Athena Parthenos, like he was taking measurements. Well, it might take some rearranging, but I think we could fit her in through the bay doors in the stable. If she sticks at the end, I might have to wrap a flag around her feet or something. Annabeth shuddered. She imagined the Athena Parthenos jutting from their tremiere with a sign across her pedestal that read, Wide Load. She thought about the other lines of the prophecy. The twins snuff out the angel's breath who holds the key to endless death. What about you guys? She said. What happened with the giants? Percy told her about rescuing Nico, the appearance of Bacchus in the fight with the twins in the Colosseum. Nico didn't say much. The poor guy looked like he'd been wandering through a wasteland for 6 weeks. Percy explained what Nico had found about the doors of death and how they had to be closed on both sides. Even with sunlight streaming in from above, Percy's news made the cavern seem dark again. So the mortal side is in Epirus, she said. At least that's somewhere we can reach. Nico grimaced. But the other side is the problem. Tartarus. The words seemed to echo through the chamber. The pit behind them exhaled a cold blast of air. That's what Annabeth knew. That's what Annabeth knew with certainty. The chasm did go straight to the underworld. Percy must have felt it too. He guided her a little further from the edge. Her arms and legs trailed with spider silk just like a bride's train. She wished she had a dagger to cut that junk off. She almost asked Percy to do the honors with Riptide, but before she could, he said, Bacchus mentioned something about my voyage being harder than I expected. Not sure why. The chamber groaned. The Athena Parthenos tilted to the one side. Its head caught on one of Arachne's support cables, but the marble foundation under the pedestal was crumbling. Nausea swelled in Annabeth's chest. If the statue fell into the chasm, all her work would be for nothing. Their quest would fail. Secure it, Annabeth cried. Her friends understood immediately. Jen, Leo cried. Get to the helm, quick. Get me to the helm, quick. Coach is up there. The coach is up there alone. Frank transformed into a giant eagle. The two of them soared toward the ship. Jason wrapped his arm around Piper. He turned to Percy. See back for you guys in a sec. He summoned the wind and shot into the air. This floor won't last, Hazel warned. The rest of us should get on the ladder. Plumes of dust and cobwebs blasted from holes in the floor. The spider's silk support cables trembled like massive guitar strings and began to snap. Hazel lunged to the bottom of the rope ladder and gestured for Nico to follow, but Nico was in no condition to sprint. Percy gripped Annabeth's hand tighter. It'll be fine, he muttered. Looking up, she saw grappling lines shoot from the Argo II and wrap around the statue. One lassoed Athena's neck like a noose. Leo shouted orders from the helm as Jason and Frank flew frantically from line to line, trying to secure them. Nico had reached the ladder when a sharp pain shot up Annabeth's bad leg. She gasped and stumbled. "What is it?" Percy asked. She tried to stagger toward the ladder. What was moving backward instead? Why was she moving backward instead? Her legs swept out from underneath her and she fell on her face. "Her ankle!" Hazel shouted from the ladder. "Cut it! Cut it!" Annabeth's mind was woolly from the pain. Cut her ankle? Apparently Percy didn't realize what Hazel meant either. Then something yanked Annabeth backwards and dragged her towards the pit. Percy lunged. She grabbed her arm, but the momentum carried him along as well. "Help them!" Hazel yelled. Annabeth glimpsed Nico hobbling in their direction, Hazel trying to disentangle her cavalry sword from the rope's ladder. Their other friends were still focused on the statue, and Hazel's cry was lost in the general shouting and rumbling of the cavern. Annabeth sobbed as she hit the edge of the pit. Her legs went over the side. Too late she realized what was happening. She was tangled in spider silk. She should have cut it away immediately. She had thought it was just a loose line, but the entire floor was covered in cobwebs. She hadn't noticed that one of the strands was wrapped around her. Sorry, that was a notification. Was wrapped around her foot, and the other end went straight into the pit. It was attached to something heavy down in the darkness, something that was pulling her in. "No," Percy muttered, light dawning in his eyes. "My sword." But he couldn't reach Riptide without letting go of Annabeth's arm, and Annabeth's strength was gone. She slipped over the edge. Percy fell with her. Her body slammed into something. She must have blacked out briefly from the pain. When she could see again, she realized she had fallen partway into the pit and was dangling over the void. Percy managed to grab onto a ledge about 15 feet below the top of the chasm. He was holding on with one hand, gripping Annabeth's wrist with the other, but the pull on her leg was much too strong. "No escape," said a voice in the darkness below. "I go to Tartarus, and you will come too." Annabeth wasn't sure if she had actually heard Arachne's voice or if it was just in her mind. The pit shook. Percy was the only thing keeping her from falling, and he was barely holding onto a ledge the size of a bookshelf. Nico was leaned over the edge of the chasm, thrusting out his hand, but he was much too far away to help. Hazel was yelling for the others, but even if they heard her over all the chaos, they wouldn't make it in time. Annabeth's leg felt like it was pulling free of her body. Pain washed everything in red. The force of the underworld tugged her like dark gravity. She didn't have the strength to fight, and she knew she was too far down to be saved. "Percy, let me go," she croaked. "You can't pull me out." His face was white with effort. She could see his eyes. In his eyes, he knew was hopeless. "Never," he said. He looked up at Nico 15 feet above. "On the other side, Nico. We'll see you there. Understand?" Nico's eyes widened. "But—" "Lead them there," Percy shouted. "Promise me." I will." Below them the voice laughed in the darkness. "Sacrifices. Beautiful sacrifices to awake the goddess." Percy tightened on his grip on Annabeth's wrist. His face was gaunt, scraped, and bloody. His face was gaunt, scraped, and bloody, and his hair was dusted with cobwebs. But when he locked eyes with her, she thought he had never looked more handsome. "We're staying together," he promised. "You're not getting away from me. Never again." Only then did she understand what would happen. A one-way trip, a very hard fall. "As long as we're together," she said. She heard Nico and Hazel still screaming for help, but she saw the sunlight far, far above, maybe the last sunlight she would ever see. Then Percy let go of his tiny edge, and together, holding hands, he and Annabeth fell into endless darkness. And that is the end of chapter 51. We'll definitely post tomorrow because I know that is a big cliffhanger, and I think 52 is the last chapter. Now there's a lot more left in the book, but that is like a 2-page chapter. It's just like extra stuff, like a glossary and stuff. So I will see you tomorrow.